I'll start the roll call. Director Rice? Absent. Director Weber?
Here.
President Costa?
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I guess we'll keep an eye if Director Rice joins. Okay, thank you. So we're at public opportunity to discuss matters of public interest within the committee scope, including items on or not on the agenda. Do we have any speakers?
I have no speaker cards. Anyone on Zoom wishing to make a public comment, please use the raise your hand feature. No public comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That brings us to the consent agenda. We have action summary minutes. We need to take action. Any questions or comments?
No, sir.
All right. I guess can I?
You
I'll
need
make
a
a
motion?
All right, we have a motion. I'll make a second.
All
So we have a
right.
first and a second. Roll call,
Yes,
please.
Director Weber?
Aye.
President Costa?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
All right, thank you. That leads us to our presentation and discussion items. So our first item is the strategic plan update. We have our Chief Development Officer, Jeff Fry.
Thank
Sir?
you and good afternoon, Executive Committee. I'll be brief with this one. Last month, we had talked about transitioning from the strategic plan workshop that we did in December. The initial consultant kind of prepared the rough draft, and now we're going to transition to ICS. The action items from that were President Costa, we're going to meet with ICS and just kind of get a feel for their style and see if they're a good fit with what we're trying to do. And then subsequently, after you met with them, I did to talk about what it means from the staff side. Really, for a bit here, it's going to be getting on the same page. I believe ICS, having a good understanding of this organization, is going to be able to help us figure out what's next. And then really the conversation I had with them was really focused on when we talk about strategic planning, a 2 to 5 year process. What is the vision? What are we trying to accomplish as a broad group? Where are we going? And then how do we get agreement on that vision collectively? So they have some really good ideas about how that can happen. Fully intended to be here. They send their apologies, had a prior commitment, couldn't be here. So I think that's next steps, and we'll look to really dive deep into that in the next couple of executive committee meetings.
Very good.
So with that said, I do want to turn the attention for the next month or so is to start building the rough draft of the document itself. Part of this process that we talked about with ICS is defining what strategic planning means for Metro Fire. And then what does the process look like specifically around the idea of this executive committee, where the parties come together, have the discussion, and we form it collectively. So I think as staff will start to write and form that document so we can focus our attention. So brief report, happy to take any questions or comments.
Director Weber, any questions?
No, sir.
The only question I have, Jeff, and I think you mentioned it's just the next couple of months, but as far as the time frame, you talk a little about time frame on the strategic plan?
I have not.
Okay.
No, sir.
So for the next, I think you said developing a rough draft, bringing it back to the executive committee and the board, just kind of get feedback and input.
Yeah, I would love to have something to you next month. I will tell you, we're coming into ledge busy season,
Yep.
prep, preliminary budget. Measure O is kicked off officially.
Yes.
So we have some pretty big projects underway.
We've got a lot going on. Okay, thank you.
I do have one question for him. You
Weber.
just mentioned, thank you.
Yes.
You mentioned that the Measure O piece. I noted that it was postponed until April 29th. Do we have a portion of the team in place, the citizens group, or are we still lacking a large percentage of that? Where are we on that?
I think the best information is going to come from Kyle. Would you come up and give an update, please?
Application.
I knew I'd get him up here.
Thank you for the question, Director. So to answer your question, it actually goes to the board at tonight's meeting to formally extend it till April 30th. The application process is still open on the website. Once it is formally adopted to extend it, we're going to do a revised push through social media, email, extra events, things like that to be able to push it. In terms of the actual selection of people, we've not started that process until it will formally close with the extended deadline to be able to try and get as many folks as possible.
But the specific question was, do we have a very small pool at this point, or just not what you were hoping for, or we just want to get more folks involved in it and then choose from that?
In terms of the number of folks, that's really more the issue. It's a smaller number of folks. It's not any indictment on any of their qualifications or anything like that. It's more just a matter of we want to have as large of a pool as possible to be able to select from.
Yeah, right. So a bigger selection of different working groups and get that. Okay, I understand.
Exactly
Thank you.
right. Across all demographics. Exactly
This
right.
question was brought up to me by a resident in my area, was asking about that. So I just thought I'd ask that and get clarification for that person.
And to be clear, if somebody's already applied, they don't have to reapply for this new window. It's all the same window or same application process. And it's certainly, again, not any indictment on the qualifications or the types of folks we've had apply so far. It's just we want to have as large of a sampling as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Jeff. So then we're done with the update on the strategic plan. Any other questions?
No, sir.
No. Okay, so we'll move to board goal strategic projects. So project number 1.
Yes, sir. So our approach to these projects is, again, open conversation here with the executive committee. Our intent, and this will ultimately be captured in the document as we move forward, is to build, we call them internally, their project charters. It describes how a project is going to complete and what are their metrics. Our intent with the briefings that you all received is to break the charter down piece by piece, so that we're not getting ahead of the board in their intent. And then you can also then take our thought process, open it up to the larger group for conversation, and then make sure that we are capturing exactly what the board intends us to capture. So with that lead in, I will focus very specifically tonight. At the last meeting, we established the overview and the project scope, and now we're getting into what I call the work plan. So the work plan will essentially be a change in how we collect information through the organization from the community, and then put it into a couple of definitions, and then how do we get that information to the board for awareness. So what I'm going to dive a little bit deeper in tonight is 2 definitions that are going to be extremely critical for this project. The first one is the definition of no surprises, and the second one is a definition of emerging issues. So again, the intent here is to make sure that the board has broad awareness of anything that could be elevated to your level before it happens. This is pretty common in most governance platforms. So we definitely want to move forward in that direction as a best practice. The second one is emerging issues. I've said it myself, and we repeat it a lot. You will hear us say board issues are really budget and policy. After doing some homework, that is not true. There happens to be a couple of other categories to be included. So I have included a definition for your consideration of operational impact, financial implications, legal regulatory exposure, reputational sensitivity, interagency or political dynamics, community impact, and strategic alignment. We may want to refine those definitions or broaden them through our conversations. Really how we're going to figure this out is to put it into practice and try it and see what happens, right? And that's, again, the intent of the committee here. After having conversations with both of you about what this means and where you all wanted to go as the executive committee, we're going to try this tonight through a emerging issue report or emerging trends report that Chief will give, and we'll test it out and see what you think. The next component is, once we work out these definitions, what will take some rhythm on behalf of the executive committee is we collect the information. It needs to go a couple of places. It's what happens next. How do we get broader awareness to the board in whole? So that can come either referral to the committees that we have. It can come through the president's report, the fire chief's report, or our deputy chief's report. So we need to work out what that looks like and how that direction is provided from the executive committee to referral to all of those governance channels. So for us, again, we're going to try it tonight. We're going to get feedback. And then really the big lift to develop the work plan is changing how we do this internally as staff. So even preparing this report this week, we found some challenges and some hiccups in how we process this work. So again, just the exercise, we found some things we can work on. So I will end my report there and happy to take any feedback or thoughts on the project this far.
So if I may, really quick, I'll say thank you for leaning in and developing it, and thank you for running into roadblocks because that's part of the process, right? Figuring out where we have some roadblocks, maybe gaps, opportunities to try to do something different, fail, pivot, try again. So I really appreciate you guys leaning in and trying to find that. So thank you. Any questions, Director Weber?
Just a comment. And I also appreciate the fact that, at least for myself, having this information before the board any meeting whatsoever, whether it's O'Toole's presentation, any presentation, having this briefing beforehand, it is a tremendous amount of help for me to understand what is going on rather than hear a 10 to 15-minute presentation, then make a decision on it. So I thank you very much for both of these as well. So great, very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
See, are you looking for some direction at the moment?
No, so again, formal communications, informal communications is
Yes.
part. I will take it informally for now, as we're developing the work plan. At some point in time, again, whether through a presentation to the full board or through your report, well, we will need to get this to the full board.
Okay,
Mhm.
perfect. I think the way you've structured it, what we've identified, the next steps looks perfect.
Okay, great.
So thank you. Great work.
Thank you.
Oh, good, good. I was hoping you were going to talk.
I am. So good evening, Executive Committee, Fire Chief, colleagues, Adam Mitchell, Deputy Chief, and also in charge of Board Executive Committee Project number 2 as Labor Management Communications, and 3, which is District to Member Communications. Tonight, I'm going to talk to you about how we took your information over the past few meetings, and we talked through defining our scope, defining our problem, defining our scope, talking at the last meeting to make sure we're in alignment, and now moving into that planning for what the work is. And then ultimately, coming out of tonight, hope is to move into the area of implementation. So there is some questions I will have for clarification and some direction to your question for Jeff there, President Costa. There will be some things I'm looking for to come out of tonight before we move into that next phase. But we're intentionally doing it differently and not getting ahead of you all as a committee. We want to make sure we're validating, not guessing prior to it. And we're going to continue to reinforce that. So good news on where we've been since the last meeting, a couple of updates, and we're not waiting to improve some of these things until we get this whole thing ready to go. As an example, we had a collaborative communication and a meeting about our CIP. Our CIP committee came together. 522 was invited. They were in the room. They did a fantastic job. It was a very positive outcome in that realm. So there's one example of an improvement. We also have been involved in actively scheduling the next labor management meeting, which is on the calendar now, coming up here in the end of next week, which is fantastic news, which also is like that demonstration of the framework and all the things that we've been asked to do moving forward while not waiting to get this totally done. So just to rehash what we heard from you all, that we have a need for structured meetings with agenda, attendance, and what we're focused on, being solution-oriented, objective discussions, document those outcomes and making sure issues get closed, and we're watching those, avoiding the repeat discussions on issues that have been decided, clearer communications to the membership and back to you as a board, and then also ongoing board visibility on things that are challenges or opportunities or wins, right? So taking that feedback, how are we reflecting it at this point? The structure, monthly meeting cadence was desired at an earlier meeting, and I'll come back to that one here later. A standard agenda format, as well as an issue intake process so that we're able to bring things in, make sure they get agendized and continue to get worked on until they're done and closed, hopefully sooner rather than later. The second part is accountability, the required attendance, and making sure that the folks that are in the room need to be in the room to make decisions on things as necessary. And then early communication if there are any challenges or anything like that with an attendance on an agenda item. And then also an accountability to issue tracking and documented outcomes. So there's something referenced and historical so we can look back and make sure everybody's got the information from decisions that have been made. And then number 3, finally, under the communication is making sure that all of those defined pathways to communicate the outcome to the membership and the board are complete and ready to go. So after the direction tonight, some of the deliverables that we'll be looking to move into, that's that next implementation phase, developing and finalizing the meeting standards and guiding principles with the agendas, solution-focused discussions, and those types of things. Also, a deliverable of the agenda and issue intake process that I mentioned earlier, the attendance model, what that looks like, making sure that that's all dialed, and then also an issue tracking system, which is that ongoing live, how, whatever, I don't want to get too far ahead about what it looks like, but the idea of making sure that we have a way that's visible for issue tracking. And then finally, that communication pathway will be another deliverable, the definitive of what that looks like and making sure that we're digging in there. And then how are we going to measure success? That was another part of what we wanted to make sure we highlighted. The meeting consistency, what's the percentage of the scheduled monthly meetings that happen, making sure that we're watching that. Attendance consistency, making sure the percentage of required participants are present. The documented outcomes, how many of those items are closed and we have clear resolution. If there are repeat issues, making sure that those are reduced. That's another metric. Communication timelines, the time from the meeting to the communication, making sure we're watching that and making that as finite as possible. Board visibility, as I mentioned, regular updates, and then the trust and predictability, that feedback from labor and management that things are improving and getting better. So work plan, our next step, what I'm asking for is we're going to have an alignment with 522 leadership between labor and management, sitting down and going through some of those deliverables I talked about and what that looks like. Developing the meeting model, all of those things I mentioned earlier, piloting it, trying it out, seeing how it goes, making those tweaks and refining, and then finalizing and returning the approval and what that looks like ultimately. It'll be based on, I put some ideas on 1 month per each, but it'll be contingent upon some of the questions I have for you tonight, some clarification. So I do also want to recognize that the focus of tonight's discussion from me is on the project number 2, but we're not also just ignoring that there's other projects, number 3 and number 4. Some of these issues that we'll talk about tonight will absolutely inform those other ones. There is still work going on there. It's not being blind eye, it's just capacity and process, making sure that we're doing one to inform the other and making that work well. And then intentionally sequencing the decisions so that we're not getting ahead of the project number 3 with district and member communications. So key decisions. So these are the things that I wanted to talk to you and hear feedback. Oh, go ahead.
I may,
I'm sorry.
sorry, before we move on, Director Weber, any questions or comments?
Actually, I do. Thank you. I'm hearing you say that you are having conversations with 522. Is that correct?
Conversations on specific to what this looks like, or there are meetings happening outside of the labor management?
On the umbrella portion of this plan, meaning are they being brought into it saying, okay, this is what we're looking at as far as the 5, 10, 15-point plan. This is how we see you integrating in this plan. And is 522 coming together? And I don't want you to speak for 522, but are you merging that at this point, or is this just a plan that we're going to get to and hopefully get that merged?
That is the outcome from tonight. That next step is sitting down and going through those specifics that you just talked about. Yes. So now that we're getting the direction from you, intent and outcome from this is to sit down and start going through those things to make them, to tighten those up and making sure that we come back with some good progress.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, just stop me whenever. I'll just keep on rolling sometimes. So, okay. So the first question and the big one we heard, previously about the monthly meeting, we heard some discussion at the last general board meeting about meeting frequency with labor management. My question to you is hearing both of those. And so we have clarity. What is your goal and your objective as an executive committee for our cadence of meetings with labor management?
Yeah. The board has been very clear. We need to make sure we are working together and aligned. And the only way we're going to get there is if we're meeting more often.
Okay.
So we need monthly cadence of meetings. I think we need to work with our partners to figure out if that works for them.
Okay.
I also believe that if we wait, the agenda becomes unruly.
Okay.
So in order to stay focused and make sure we're addressing issues as they're coming forward, is that we need to meet regularly, and monthly would be, I think, has been the direction from the board. So
Great.
thank you.
Wanted to confirm that.
In there. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Another item that had come up previously in some of the discussions is specific to you all as an executive committee. There had been a suggestion, recommendation that had been brought up as a point of executive committee involvement in those labor management meetings. What does that look like from your perspective? Is that something that we need to make sure that we include? What is your direction there?
I think one, awareness on, we have a schedule, we have an agenda, we're meeting. I think it would be appropriate for the first meeting or so to have a member of the executive committee just there to observe. Once they get underway and things are working well, I think we will just be in the way, so probably best to get us out of there. But I think for now, it'd be important to support the processes to have one of us there. Does that
Yeah.
work for you, Director?
I would agree with that 100%. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I think Director Weber, to your question about what next steps are, that the support for building that framework, coming up with those meeting principles, what that looks like moving forward and sitting down together, just looking for making sure that's a support. But I think you already answered that one with that being the next step. That's where we're going. I saw your head shake. Yes, just confirming we're good there to build and develop that out and get it written down so everybody understands the lanes. Okay, good.
I appreciate the whole package you're putting together right now. It's exactly what we've been asking for a while. So appreciate your work on this as well, moving forward with this and getting buy-in from all parties. So thanks.
Great. I'm looking forward to that. Good. And then the last one I have, as far as confirming the direction, what do you all as a committee prefer as updates? How does that look? Executive committee is one way, written. How do you guys want the updates about status on this project moving forward as we implement it? What is that?
I would think you'd come to the execs at minimum, followed up with an email so we have hard copies on that. That's just my opinion on it. So, do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we were just discussing is, yes, coming to the executive committee and giving us feedback and then also a email or a document of some sort. So we have not only your own tracking, but our
Right.
tracking as well, as far as what all the outline was and the goals are and timelines and achievabilities and all of that. So both of those, I think, would be helpful to the execs.
Excellent. Okay.
If I may, Chief, just
Absolutely.
to follow up and ask a question. I think having these meetings are important. Tracking what we're doing is going to be extremely important for awareness for the board. The next is how we communicate that. So my question is resource allocations,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot going on. The board's throwing a lot at you. What do you see as the resource allocation here? Is there an alternative to what we're asking for as far as report outs?
It is a lot of work. This just with everything going on, I agree with you. However, the priority of this being from you all, I think, is at the top. I think knowing now, having this direction, sitting down with 522 leadership, getting to where this is a framework that we can use moving forward, that everybody understands and that we all agree to. Having somebody in the room as a resource, I think, from your perspective, is going to be very helpful as we start this off, as you said. I think just knowing the focus as we do, on these projects is some of the other things that may be on our to-do list are going to get continued to bump down. I don't have specifics on a critical thing that's not happening right now. We're doing a good job, but I don't feel like we're short on resources yet in this space. I'm sure there's things that get to bump down the to-do list, but we're doing a good job, I feel like, internally to manage that. So if there's something that you're thinking about that I'm not thinking about, that would be
I see
great.
Jeff, but before Jeff steps up,
He's
I'll
like a
just say,
ninja.
I do think we have a framework, right? The executive committee is a good forum to bring these back on a regular basis so we can have a touch base. A report out working through the clerk to make sure the board is fully apprised of what's happening is going to be important and appropriate. So Chief, I would say, let's make sure we're working with the clerk to make that happen. But I think Jeff, you have.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts here. With the bulletin that recently went out with the realignment of the community relations teams with planning development. And we have also been working very closely with the Office of the Fire Chief team with Jill. One of our intent here is to have more regular internal meetings with those three groups so that we can be better aligned in accomplishing these, understanding the workflow restrictions, and then with a small team, with all three of us, how do we pivot and be more reactive as a group, rely on each other instead of being siloed to be able to adjust these workloads to meet the need. So we do have a number of internal staff meetings with all three of those groups to start to figure out how we adjust the workload and address the board's need.
Fantastic. Thank you. And thank you for thinking through that, because I think it's important for the board to remember there are resource constraints. We have a lot of things going on. We have a lot of focus. We also need to hear back from you. While it's a priority, what is that reality on the workforce side? So thank you.
And we appreciate the question, President Casa. the challenges we don't know about yet, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and I'll just transparency, waiting to hear from you on the direction before we start or built to jump and continue to go
Yes.
forward. I think that's a new thing for us. And so we probably trip up a little bit here and there, and we know that, but at least we're doing something different and getting to it better. So thank you for the question.
I'd like to piggyback on your statement.
Yes, please, Director.
So along with the constraints, so we understand that the DCs, specifically yourself, are right here with all kinds of other things, personnel issues, all kinds of other things. And you may not have the full bandwidth to address what we are asking you. So we just want you to understand that we're mindful of that, respectful of that as well, because we're aware where you are. You might be in a snorkel at this point, but we're aware of that. So if there's anything that we can do to lighten that or lessen the burden on yourselves, bring it to us, because we are definitely aware of that as well.
Great. Appreciate that. Thank you. Any other?
Do you have anything else, Chief Mitchell?
What's out of the hot seat?
No, I'll
It's-
stand right with you.
Vice President Scholar, thank you. Thank you for stepping up.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate it. Thank you. It's awkward sitting in the back and listening to all these conversations about 522 and not saying anything.
Yeah.
So I think Chief Mitchell did a great job going over the plan and stuff like that. I just made some scratch notes here, but Director Weber, you asked if 522 is involved in what their plan is and stuff. I think that's planning on being discussed at the
Mhm.
next labor management meeting is the perspective I have from that.
Okay.
That's their plan that they're putting together as a team that will be presented to us at the next labor management meeting. Chief House and I heard, I think, the entire board loud and clear. We cleared some time in our schedule to meet, probably more time than we initially anticipated. I think we ended up meeting for about 3 hours for coffee, and we probably should have gotten a bite to eat as well, just because it lasted so long. But in that, we talked about labor management. We talked about moving that meeting up. It was scheduled for the end of the month, but we're going to be at CPF convention, and obviously his schedule fills up quick. So does mine, and we have to coordinate with the rest of our team to be able to figure that out. I think both sides made some sacrifices to move that meeting up to the 17th. I know with travel and stuff like that, it's super difficult, but we saw the value in moving that meeting up and not postponing it back into May, so that we could address these, hear their plan. 522 can give input on, what our vision expectations are as well. And I think that's going to get vetted out at that next labor management. And, I think that'll give us a good insight of the frequency of following meetings. I think we just need to get back in the room and be able to get on the same page and figure out what that looks like. So that kind of answers the question in regards to the frequency of the meetings. A good clarification that Chief Mitchell made as far as an executive member in the room. Obviously, this wasn't a planned meeting and pushing it up. And so, I didn't communicate out to you guys and to make sure if one of you wanted to be in the room, but it was a little bit last minute. So if one of you are available for the 17th, I think we have it scheduled for 2:30. Just so we could get a little bit extra time. So 2:30 on the 17th. If one of you are available, fantastic. And, whether or not that's the standard practice moving forward is something that you guys will have to decide as far as your expectations and what you want to see. And again, deliverables, as far as how we deliver those, executive committee, I'm hearing that as well. So you would want reports out from labor to executive committee on outputs out of that meeting, no different than you have the expectation of the chief officers. Is that correct? Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. And I know we'll vet more of this in labor management. But as Chief Mitchell stated, we're still having meetings outside of labor management. My hope is that those continue. Labor management shouldn't be where we figure out everything in the organization. We have our org chart that's been sent out, and I know Chief Alsis disseminated that amongst his team. And so I know that there are labor and management meetings happening with those respective areas, and work's getting done. Hopefully, if we're looking for more of a definitive answer or something like that, then that's where we can bring that to labor management, get more concrete definitive answers so that it can help progress the meetings that are happening outside that room. So, but we'll probably have more discussions on that. So
Fantastic. Thank you for taking the time and providing some feedback.
Of course.
Director Weber. Yes.
Well, excuse me. I appreciate very much the tone change. I can't tell you how happy I am to hear that we are going to be getting in the same room as much as possible. You have an open mind, and when I asked that question, I just wanted to make sure 522 is in that process. So that's why I asked the question. You were going to be updated in the next management meeting of what this is. You guys can do whatever you do in there, and hopefully it'll be productive moving forward. So I appreciate your efforts. It's noted. So thank you.
No problem.
And if I may, really quick,
Of
sorry.
course.
Thank you for being here and taking the time to provide feedback and participate in this process. And I think you're hearing from the board. I mean, this is a focus of ours, is to ensure we are working together. And so we're not looking for perfection. We're just looking for movement, which is key. And I think the other thing is, collaboration doesn't mean we agree. It does mean that we're going to get in the room and try to work through together. So I appreciate you taking the time to do that. I appreciate you taking the time to look at this framework and say, yes, this works. Because again, we're going to test it. We're going to see how it works. We're going to pivot. We're going to do it again, right? With the intent of working together and moving this organization forward. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Of course.
President Costa,
Yes. Oh,
I didn't want to interrupt you guys. Director or Secretary Rice joined at 17:55 hours. My apologies for the late hours. Traffic was not kind to me.
okay. No problem. Thank you for joining. Director Rice, do you have any feedback on the topic?
I caught about half of what VP Scholar talked about, and I echo what Director Weber said. I'm excited. There's nothing that we can't work through together.
Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you, Director Rice.
Yeah, you didn't ask for me to repeat everything, so that's.
No, that's good. You're good. You're good. Thank you.
Yeah, and if I may, while VP Scholar is up there, we had a fantastic meeting, and it was longer than we anticipated, but I hear the executive committee loud and clear. I think with Vice President Scholar's comments just now, I hear loud and clear, and we probably both agree this will be the #1 item on the next agenda.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chief.
And
Thank
just
you, VP.
On that,
Ballard.
yeah.
Thank you.
yeah, Of course, stay there too.
No.
Just to that point, the expectation, similar to what you had mentioned, Director Weber, was I'll get some stuff on paper so that it's not trying to figure it all out in the meeting to get over to 522 leadership. So we have productive conversations and efficient in the room. We're not just learning about stuff for the first time. So that is an intent. We will commit to that and get that over next week so that we can get in the room on 17th and have some good stuff come out of there. So
Thank you again.
Yeah, fantastic work. Chief Mitchell, before you step away, just want to confirm. So you have what you need to move forward.
yes,
So I think one of the items here is approval to proceed.
yes.
Okay, so you have what you need. We provided direction on those questions. I think Director Weber, we're aligned on moving forward with this.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
We're
Thank you
aligned.
for the clarity.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
All right.
Yes. And Chief House, thank you for leaning in and working with our partners at 522.
Absolutely. Yes. I think we all want the same thing.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so that brings us to #3, emerging issues. So Chief House, we'll start with the first one, financial implications, preliminary budget preparation.
Absolutely. I'm going to change the schedule a little bit just because of
Oh,
time, and I
sorry.
want to get one out of the way that's a priority for us. So I'd like to start with emerging trends, and to start with, this issue is related to, as you're aware, the legal services RFP, specifically regarding the evaluation process and board participation has been talked about. And so I just wanted to give an update there and get some direction from the executive committee. As we prepare to begin the selection phase, Director Gould asked during a board meeting whether a board member should participate directly on the evaluation panel. In response, we asked our procurement team and general counsel to review the issue. The procurement team found that while board member participation is unusual, it's not unheard of. They advised that if the board chooses to move forward in this direction, we should proceed carefully to protect the fairness and integrity of the competitive process. General counsel agreed and added an important caution condition. If a board member participates in the evaluation panel, they must recuse themselves from the final vote on the contract award. From an administrative standpoint, we are working under a tight schedule, as you know, and keep in mind that we're moving this process forward. One consideration with including a board member is the time commitment. Evaluations typically require 2 to 3 hours per proposal. And we do not yet know how many proposals we will receive. There is also a potential for interviews as part of the process, which will require additional time and coordination. Given this, we need to clarify on panel composition as soon as possible to keep the process on schedule. There are 2 options before the committee tonight. First, the committee may choose to designate a board member to participate. If so, that selection should occur outside of a public meeting to avoid compromising the integrity of the procurement process. Second, the committee may choose to have one of the evaluation panel members represent the board's collective interest. This is staff recommendation. It maintains procurement's best practices, avoids conflict of interest, and keeps the process on schedule. Our goal is to ensure the RFP process is conducted fairly, efficiently, and in line with the board's expectations. And tonight, we're seeking the committee's input so we can finalize that evaluation panel and move forward. As you know, this closes tomorrow, Friday at noon. I'm happy to answer any questions on
Great.
this.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions, Director Weber?
Do we make this decision?
So Director Weber was just asking about process. So we have 2 recommendations before us.
Correct.
One keeps us on track.
Correct.
And so the committee believes it's important to continue moving that forward. So we move forward with the staff's recommendation.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification in that direction. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, and the next one is financial implications, the preliminary budget preparation as we're going through that process. Each year we enter the spring budget cycle, staff begin to coordinate work required to prepare the preliminary budget for presentation in May. This process involves several parallel efforts and must come together to give the finance division a complete picture of our operational, capital, and staffing needs. The first component is the development of the services and supplies budget. Our finance staff has been meeting with division heads and to review operational needs, identify cost drivers, and capture any anticipated changes for the coming fiscal year. Additionally, we have collected budget request forms, which are intended to capture staff requests to improve district operations. In an effort, in a moment, I will be seeking direction on how to treat new budget requests. The second component of the capital improvement plan. This requires a separate set of meetings with divisions that have capital needs. Whether facilities, apparatus, technology, or equipment, this request must be evaluated not only for operational necessity, but also for their impact on long-term capital planning and the reserve account. The third component is the wages and benefits plan. Finance has prepared costing projections for our current workforce, while the Office of the Fire Chief is collecting information from division heads regarding new staffing needs. These requests are important for long-term service delivery, but they also come at a time when we continue to face budget pressures that you're aware of and actively engage in and we're currently actively engaged in labor negotiations. In a moment, I'm going to be seeking direction on how to treat these new position requests. From the board's perspective, we have heard clearly that this process must be transparent and communicated effectively to both division heads and labor, ensuring that all stakeholders understand the request and evaluated is essential to maintain trust and consistency. From the executive team's perspective, we recognize that decision-making is more challenging during negotiations. At the same time, the preliminary budget must be completed by May, and we cannot delay the work required to meet that deadline. At this point, the work plan is well underway. Staff has captured preliminary requests for new staffing, capital projects, and services and supplies. We are now assessing the impacts of these requests on the reserve account and the overall financial outlook of the organization. The final step today is to seek direction from the executive committee. Specifically, we are asking for guidance on 2 fronts. First, how would the committee like to progress on the budget to be communicated leading up to the preliminary budget process, given the sensitivity of negotiations? Options include incorporating updates into the deputy chief's reports, evaluating them to the president's report, or providing periodic updates, written updates to division heads and labor. Second, we're asking for direction on how to proceed with evaluating and prioritizing new budget requests. Given ongoing financial pressures, we need to clarify on whether to categorize requests by operational necessity, defer certain items until after negotiations, or apply a temporary decision-making framework to this current budget cycle. Our goal is to ensure that the preliminary budget is developed in a way that is transparent, responsible, and aligned with expectations to the board. I'm happy to answer any questions on that. Sure.
Thank you, Chief. And thank you, team, for putting this together and bringing it to our attention. So Chief, it sounds like we have two questions before the
Correct.
committee. Can we start with the first one?
How the committee would like to process progress on the budget to be communicated leading up to the preliminary budget presentation, given the sensitivity of negotiations. Options include incorporating updates into the deputy chief's reports, elevating them to the president's report, or providing periodic written updates to division heads and labor.
Director Weber, any initial thoughts?
Yeah, I would suggest putting it into the deputy chief's reports and then forwarding it to the president's report. I like that option.
Yeah, that works. Chief, does that
Yeah.
work on your end and team?
Sure.
Okay, so then we'll incorporate those updates into the deputy chief's reports, and then we'll provide an update as part of the president's report, just to keep the board and the public apprised of what we're doing and where we're going.
Okay. And then second question.
Really quick, Director Weber?
I have one question for you before we go. Do you have recommendations on any of these that you would like to see? Would one work better for you and the entire staff, or?
I think this has to go with, leaning in and ensuring that you're well communicated beforehand. So unknown at this point, I think we should try having the report outs in the deputies, each branches, and start there. And if that's not meeting the need of good communication and transparency, then we'll work on something else.
Run that.
Perfect. And leaning in, trying something different. See how it
Absolutely.
works. Perfect.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chief. So on this first item, we have Vice President Scollard. Would you like to make a few
I
comments?
just have a clarifying question
Please.
too. Is the direction then, so would this forego CFO O'Toole's presentation on the prelim budget, and the prelim would be broken into different categories specific to the deputy chief's roles and responsibilities?
My understanding is that will not be the case. Sorry, Chief.
No.
No. Okay.
Okay.
This is just a
more-
mechanism for communication back to the board, kind of where we are, where things are going.
Gotcha. So
The
as
same budget
update
presentations
coming
will
in
continue.
On the budget, they'll give updates relative to their perspective, roles and responsibilities
Correct.
up to the prelim report from Dave.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Great question, though. Good.
Makes
Thank you.
sense.
Yeah. So in an effort for transparency and making sure we're keeping the board and public apprised of what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Yep.
Chief.
I'm breaking it down by each branch.
Director Rice?
I appreciate this, the clarification that Vice President Scollard just put up there. I was a little bit concerned that we would be hanging up any kind of budget updates or anything due to negotiations. We can handle both, and the answer given, I appreciate that. The question I had there, you answered it. I like the direction. I think it's right.
Thank you, Director Rice. Thank you, Chief. So we've got the first one.
Yep.
All right.
So the second one, we're asking on directions how to proceed with evaluating and prioritizing new budget requests. Given the ongoing financial pressures, we need to clarify whether to categorize requests by operational necessity, defer certain items until after negotiations, or apply a temporary decision-making framework for this budget cycle. It's basically three different things. And I think to Director Rice's point, I think that right now with negotiations, probably deferring those would be staff's recommendation right now.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. Questions from the committee?
No questions, but I agree with the deferment process as well.
Director Rice, thoughts?
President Costa, just as I was listening to it, one thing that I think is really important, and it was the first thing the chief listed, operational need or operational necessity. And once that has been determined, I kind of think that can drive you whether or not you need to defer or act on whatever the issue may be at hand. For me, I'm pretty sensitive if we have an operational necessity and deferring it. What does that look like? What does that mean? So for me, I'm a little cautious in that regard. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Director. I think that's a perfect question, Chief, for you as far as your ability and the team's ability to pivot if necessary.
Absolutely. I think we're sensitive to negotiations, right? We're sensitive to the budget. It's not defer all of them. If we have an operational need, this is a new mechanism where it could provide really real-time reports, right, within a 2-week period and give updates. And I agree with Director Rice. Operational needs will obviously trump everything. It's in line with our #1 mission.
Okay, so what's being proposed doesn't get in the way of making sure we are prioritizing that and
Absolutely.
pivoting accordingly. Okay. Director Rice, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And I see Vice President Scollard.
Yes,
Some
thank you. I
feedback?
was just going to echo the same thing that Director Rice said. And I understand the district's concerns, and I appreciate Chief House recommendation and staff's recommendation on deferral of some of those positions. But I did want to say that operational necessity is something that obviously labor prioritizes as well. Recommendation would be when those operational priorities come up, maybe that's something that we can discuss in labor management. Because obviously if it's a need operationally that affects the members and the community, we want to make sure that we're providing the services to the community that they deserve. So that's something that we could work on together if there's operational needs to have those discussions in labor management, maybe even look at and work through. I know Chief Rica said that some of those budget requests were going to come over to labor for us to be able to review. So maybe we can do that collaboratively, identify what is an operational need. It may be something that piggybacks in a conversation that we're having in negotiations anyways. So we can work through some of those deferrals, and maybe some of them happen now and some of them happen later. But I do appreciate the hesitation of not looking to drive up labor expense by adding more positions while in negotiations. I think it's something we can work through.
Perfect. So if I just make sure I'm tracking correctly. So you're comfortable with the operational piece. We don't want to hold back because we're in negotiations. You understand that dynamic.
Yeah, and I don't
Here,
think we
okay.
have a right to hold that back. I think that's a district right.
Chief need to make decisions and pivot and move.
Correct. And
Okay.
so if there's operational needs now, getting on the same page as far as how those operational needs are addressed, you know,
Yes.
and obviously given our perspective on how to address those, especially when money's tied to it and the forecasts that we've seen in budgetary presentations, obviously we need to be mindful of that. So,
Okay.
But yeah, I think it's something that can be addressed in labor management, and we can work on that.
Perfect. Thank you. Director Weber, any questions? Quick
It
question.
just sounds like we finally have gotten to a place where we've got a fair or at least a good model that you're in the room more, transparency is taking place. The chief and you are having conversations, labor management's still happening, negotiations still happening. But it sounds like we have a model now that at least both parties have come to the table and realizing what is best for the district and what is best for the people of Metro Fire. So again, thanks for coming together.
Thank you for leaning in.
Of course.
I think this is a good example of the beauty of making sure we're meeting more often to ensure we're addressing issues collaboratively. So thank you. Yeah,
Of course.
So Chief, I think you got your direction if I'm not
Absolutely.
mistaken. So
Yep.
you need to run this organization. So do what you have to do operationally. However, we'll defer some of these requests just given the current environment we're in. You're the chief, you run this organization, you have to make those decisions. So you comfortable with the direction you need?
Absolutely. Thank you for that direction.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Chief. All right. Any
All
other
right.
comments? Sorry. Any other comments? Sorry. No. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Good for the next one?
Yes, please.
All righty. As we know, conversations with Folsom have been occurring, right? The past several weeks, Folsom has adjusted its EMS deployment model in response to its internal budget shortfalls. As part of that adjustment, they have relocated medic units away from the jurisdictional boundaries shared with Metro Fire. The intent is to concentrate resources to the central of their city. While this decision is understandable for their internal fiscal perspective, it has created a number of questions for our agency, for our members, and for the government bodies that oversee our automatic aid agreement. From the board's perspective, our 2x2 committee members have asked for clarity on how these changes may affect the balance of automatic aid. Director Gould has emphasized its importance of ensuring that the system remains equitable and that Metro Fire is not disproportionately absorbing workload at the boundaries. That was a great use of that word. Director Jones has reminded us that the true measure of the balance is not incident counts or dispatches, but time on task. The actual workload of our units are performing across the system. From an executive standpoint, I've asked staff to provide a full accounting of the total deployments and forecast how Folsom's new deployment model may shift the demand and workload across our boundary areas. We need to understand not only what has changed, but what we can expect going forward. The EMS chief, our EMS chief, has taken a proactive approach and directed the planning and development section to collect data and evaluate 2 deployment options. These options are intended to help us understand the operational impacts and provide a foundation for informed decision-making. Our members, particularly those working in battalions adjacent to Folsom, have expressed concern about increased call volume and the potential for greater operational strain. Their focus is on workload, response, reliability, and the downstream impacts on staffing. To support all these perspectives, planning and development has assembled a storyboard. This captures the key data points, historical current deployment patterns, time on task, incident density, response time impacts, and the forecast effects of Folsom's redeployment under the 2 model scenarios. This information has given us a clear picture on how the system is shifting and where the pressure points may emerge. At this point, the executive committee has several pathways for direction. You may choose to refer this matter back to the 2x2 committee for further discussion with Folsom leadership. You may elevate it to the full board if broader policy guidance is needed. You may direct staff to conduct additional analysis or refine the modeling, or you may ask that we report back to the executive team with expectations and next steps. My goal today here is to ensure the committee has a clear understanding of the issue and perspectives involved and the data we have collected so far. With your direction, we can determine the approach venue and depth of the continued work to ensure that our automatic aid system remains balanced, reliable, and aligned with expectations of this board. I do have Jake in the audience tonight that can give a brief update on the data he collected, if that's so desired tonight, and also Deputy Chief Wagaman on the operational impacts that we've had thus far and what we've done about those. Our recommendation is to probably take this back to the 2x2 and get the electeds in the room to move this forward for additional conversations. I'll be happy to take questions on this.
Director Weber, any questions? Yes.
Yeah, so the data collection, is that going both ways? Meaning, is it also capturing how many times Folsom is coming into our area?
Correct. The storyboard shows that data. And we made adjustments since then.
Okay, rattled me here. Well, with that, yes, I agree with the 2x2 portion of that, but I also would like it to be brought before the entire board as well.
Okay.
Both.
And based on time tonight, I think the storyboard and the report out on what those effects are probably appropriate for the full board then. We'll put that on the agenda.
That's fine. Thank you.
Director Rice?
Thank you, President. Chief, would one of those potential options be expanding the service via our private for-profit provider? Is that one of the options that may be on the table?
Yes, that's always an option.
I think, I've always said, I believe EMS is not an industry, it's a service best performed by sworn public safety officers, which are firefighters and firefighter paramedics. But I do think that this is an area that would lend itself that we lean into our private industry partner maybe fill that gap. So I'm glad to hear that that's part of the consideration. And directionally, whether it goes the 2x2 and back to the full board or back to the board with the recommendation, I look forward to either, and I appreciate the work. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rice. So Chief, I think you're hearing from the executive committee that we move forward with it going back to the 2x2, since that is set up for that purpose of collaboration between our two boards. And then at your discretion, bringing it back to an update to the board when we're ready. But I think it makes sense to leave it with our 2x2.
Copy that. I'll reach out to the city manager and try to get that scheduled. And then we'll bring back the full board, what's actually happening and what the storyboard looks like.
Very good. Thank you, Chief.
All right, and the last one for tonight is Station 116. As you know, Station 116 is an aging facility that has been out of service for several years. The building suffered a fire that caused significant damage to the structure, and since that time, it has not been usable for operational purposes. Our facilities division has completed the necessary assessments and is prepared to move forward with demolition. Before we take the next step, however, we need to ensure that our outreach and communication efforts are in line and responsive to the expectations of both the board and to the community. From the board's perspective, Director Sailors has asked that we meet directly with the neighboring property owners to explain the building's condition, the need for demolition, and all of our intentions for the site. This is an important next step in maintaining transparency and being a good partner to the residents who live close to that facility. From the community's perspective, we have heard a clear request for information about what the district plans to do with that property. Residents want to understand the timeline, the purpose of the demolition, and any future considerations for the site. Their interest underscores the importance of the coordinated community strategy. From an executive standpoint, the Chief Development Officer has directed the Planning, Development, and Communications team to collaborate to ensure project planning and public messaging are in line. The coordination will help us avoid gaps, ensure accuracy, and maintain trust with the community. To support these expectations, we've developed a two-part work plan. First, the communications team has prepared a community engagement strategy that includes outreach to the adjacent neighbors, public information materials, and communication timelines that ensure stakeholders are informed before, during, and after the demolition. Second, once those outreach steps are completed, the facilities division will proceed with the demolition project, including contractor coordination, site preparation, and securing the property after the structure is removed. At this point, the executive committee has several options for direction. You may choose to include this update in the deputy chief's report as part of the routine operational report, or you may choose to elevate it to the president's report if you feel that warrants broader visibility. Or you may request additional information such as cost estimates, timelines, or long-term site planning consideration. My goal today is to ensure the committee has a clear understanding of the issue, the perspectives involved, and the work already underway. With your direction, we'll move forward in the way that is transparent, coordinated, and aligned with the expectations of the board and the community we serve. And that's the end of that update, and I'll answer any questions we have there.
Right. Any questions from the committee?
Yes,
Director Weber.
actually, so I don't talk at the end of the regular ones. I would suggest you entertain a thought, not only with the outreach program that or plan that you have in place, either yourself or one of your designees do a town hall meeting and give plenty of notice for folks to come and ask you directly or your designee directly everything that you just explained to us. I mean, piggyback that with the plan itself. So that I would suggest you would at least entertain that.
I'd be happy to do a town hall, and I'll ensure that Director Sailors is invited. I see her in the audience, and I think she would love to do that with me. So absolutely, great idea.
Thank you, Director. Director Rice?
Chief, thank you for the update. And I can tell you this, going back as a member and a firefighter with the American River Fire Protection District, the successor agency, and I clearly remember the consolidation and merger with Rio Linda, Alberta. I cannot stress to you how important community outreach is going to be. I worked in those communities as an engineer and also a fire captain. I know that, you know, over the years, we've lost some pillars of that community in Wilma Dyer and members of the Dyer family, but I know that there are other very prominent community members out there. We as Metro Fire will, no matter what we do, with that piece of property in Station 116, we will do ourselves, but more importantly, the community, a major disservice if we don't go the extra mile and communicate. The community of Rio Linda, Alberta, yes, my experience is now 30 years old, but my memory is it is a very proud community and it is a community that is very engaged. So I can't stress enough, do not miss the opportunity to keep the community well informed. That will be the failure or success of this project. So that's it. I just kind of advocating for a community that I worked in and that I have a heart for. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rice. I think, Chief, what you've laid out is perfect. We've identified emerging issue. We've taken feedback from our stakeholders, especially from our fellow board member about how best to approach the community. You've developed a plan. I think part of that is a request for a town hall component. I think it meets what Director Rice was saying as well. So I think we've got the next steps for the team on the plan. Plan looks great. Let's implement it. I think the question is the process to bring it back. And I think it makes sense that it just be included as part of the Deputy Chief's report.
Copy that.
All right.
And great idea on the town hall. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. That brings us to the end of the agenda. I'll just say it was a heavy agenda, a lot of great participation. Thank you for leaning in and thank you for moving us forward. And with that, our next meeting is May 14th. Meeting adjourned.